Hello, everyone. We're going to give folks a few minutes to log in and also to enter the live on Facebook. We're streaming on Zoom and on Facebook at the same time. So I just want to give folks a few minutes to log in. We'll get started soon. Thanks for being here. Hi, we're just giving everyone some time to log in and enter the live. We'll start soon. Thanks for being here. All right, for those who are on Zoom, just a quick note to please stay on mute throughout the meeting. That will be helpful. I'll mention this again in a bit, but my colleague Kartika is on both the Facebook Live and the Zoom chat. So if you have questions during the presentation, please enter them into the Facebook comments or into the Zoom chat. She'll be monitoring them, and at the end, we'll have a Q&A. Just going to give folks a few more minutes to log in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks again to those of you who are tuned in. My name is Sarah, and I'm the Immigration Services Program Manager at SBU. Today, we're going to talk about how to apply for benefits during COVID-19. I just wanted to mention really quickly that my colleague Kartika is also on the Zoom call and the Facebook Live. So if you have questions about anything during the presentation, please use the chat or the comments section. She's going to be monitoring both. And at the end, we're going to have some time for Q&A. I also wanted to say that if some of you were also present during the first presentation that I did about a month ago now, today's is going to be a bit different in that we're going to be focusing on really how to go through both the unemployment application and the application for HRA benefits. And we're going to go through some updates to resources that we talked about that first time, but the focus is really going to be going through the application itself. So today's goal is that viewers will come away feeling confident that they understand how to apply for unemployment and HRA benefits. Also, that viewers will learn important updates on resources for New Yorkers regardless of immigration status. Here's our agenda for today. The first thing we're going to do is go through the unemployment application. Next, we're going to go through the HRA application, which I'll specify includes SNAP, which is food stamps, also cash assistance, and Medicaid. Those are all included in that application. Then updates on stimulus checks, community resources, including loans for small businesses, and updates on immigration. And lastly, we'll have some Q&A. Just a quick note that COVID-19 is still new, so we continue to learn new things every day about both the virus and resources. You could stay informed by visiting these two websites, cdc.gov or newyorkstate.gov. Also, if you'd like to receive text updates about how the city's responding, you could text COVID to 877-877. There's also a New York coronavirus hotline, and here's a number, 888-364-3065. Just to remember, please, that not all the information you may hear from other people or on the internet is true. And a quick note that I'll remind you all of again later is that SBU families can set up an appointment to discuss any topic in further detail. Again, there's going to be a Q&A at the end. And contact information for other organizations who can help will also be included at the end. Here's my contact information, which I will again show at the end. But if you'd like to note that, please feel free to now. All right, so first thing we're going to talk about is unemployment. Benefits have been largely expanded for unemployment under the stimulus, which is the federal law that was passed. So those who are unemployed, are partly unemployed, or can't work for a wide variety of coronavirus-related reasons will now be more than likely to receive unemployment benefits. The amount that you'll receive will be calculated based on previous income. There are two types of unemployment benefits a worker can qualify for. The first is unemployment insurance, New York State unemployment insurance, and the second is pandemic unemployment assistance, which was one of the things that was added under the federal law. Importantly, though, there's only one application. When you fill out the one application through the New York State website, it will automatically determine which of the two types of insurance you're eligible for. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, second one I mentioned, extends benefits to workers who wouldn't have otherwise, aren't traditionally eligible for unemployment benefits. So this covers workers who are self-employed, independent contractors, or employees who receive 1099s. Also, it covers those who quit their jobs due to family care needs and have insufficient work history to qualify for New York State unemployment. Who qualifies for unemployment? Part-time workers, gig workers, freelancers, and independent contractors are all covered. If you have COVID-19 or need to care for a family member who has it and you can't work because of this, you're covered. If you rely on a school, a daycare, or another facility to care for a child, elderly parent, or another household member so that you can work, and that facility has been shut down because of coronavirus, you are eligible. People who must self-quarantine are also covered. You are covered if you just started a new job or were about to start a job but then didn't because of COVID-19. You're also covered if you had to quit because you were told to quarantine by a healthcare provider or because your child's daycare closed and you're the primary caregiver. Continuing on who qualifies, If your job shut down because of coronavirus, you are covered. You are not covered if you can work from home, if you're receiving paid sick leave or paid family leave. Also important to note that you do need a social security number to apply for unemployment benefits. If you have an ITIN, an ITIN, you cannot qualify for unemployment benefits. But we're going to talk a little bit about what people can do if that's their situation in the next couple of slides. The CARES Act also includes pandemic unemployment compensation, which means that workers who are eligible for unemployment will automatically receive a weekly payment of $600 in addition to whatever they receive under the unemployment benefit payment. And this extra payment will be available through July 31st, 2020. You don't have to do anything to receive that extra money. Once you're approved for unemployment, you will also receive this. And a link to an FAQ is here at nyc.gov. I wanted to include this flowchart here as well, which I find helpful when thinking about which of the two in unemployment benefits one qualifies for and how to go about applying for them. So you can refer to this to try to figure that out if it's confusing, but basically the important thing to remember is that you are going to use the same application for both and that it's expanded greatly. And I included a link here to this. I wanted to be sure and mention some things that are really important to have before you apply and to gather. I would say that if you don't have all of these things gathered, it's better to wait an extra day to apply rather than apply without having these things because it could potentially delay your application. So you need to have your full legal name, whatever has been reported to the IRS, your social security number, driver's license, or motor vehicle ID card number, your complete mailing address and zip code. Importantly, too, a phone number where the Department of Labor can reach you between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, because they are calling people regularly. Your alien registration card number if you're not a U.S. citizen and you have a card. The name and addresses of all your employers for the last 18 months, including if you worked in other states. You need to have that information. Also, it's important to have your employer's employer identification number, the EIN. It's also known as the Federal Employer Identification Number, FEIN, or the Federal Tax Identification Number, the FTIN. This is a 9-digit number and can be found on your W-2 or 1099 form. If you don't have that when you apply, what the application will do is it'll ask you for your employer's contact information, but then that means that a worker on the back end has to take an extra step to contact your employer to confirm the information versus just running it against your EIN, their EIN. So it's important that you have your EIN when you apply to prevent further delays in your application. You're also going to want to have your most recent W-2 or 1099 if that's what you receive. And if you'd like direct deposit, then you should have your bank information with you, including the routing number and checking account number. All right, these are the three options on where you can apply. First is by phone, and here's the number and the times you can call Monday through Sunday from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. A lot of people right now have applied and are trying to call the claims center constantly, so I really would not recommend applying via the phone if you can avoid it, because it's very difficult to get through to a person, very, very difficult. If you can, it's very much preferred that you try to apply online. There are two applications right now. This is the old system, and the new system is a streamlined application that was developed because so many people were applying because of COVID-19. I would recommend using the old system. It does ask you a few extra questions, but what I've heard sort of just from people, this isn't necessarily a systematic thing, but just from what I've heard from a few folks is that when they use the new system, they haven't received a response because it's, from what I assume, so many people are using it. But then to give a specific example, one person applied under the new system but didn't receive a response for a few weeks, so then filled another application out through the old system and got a reply within about a week, an approval within about a week. So I would recommend just avoiding all that and using the old system. And these are the two links to the respective systems. Just to show you what you should be seeing. This is what you'll see when you open the link to the old system. This is the login page for that. Compared to the new system, this is what you'll see. So you can see it's, it even just looks like less information. But also so that you can feel confident that you're at the right place. These are one of the two things you should see when you're at the correct application. All right, a little bit about what they'll ask you in the application itself. So basic contact information, your full name, your address, your phone number, an email address too. Again, your social security number, which you do need to have to qualify. You're also going to want to have the last date that you worked and what type of work you did. Again, your employer's EIN. I already mentioned this, but if you don't have it, they'll ask you for your employer's contact information, also how much you made and how often you were paid. They'll ask you for that. They're also going to ask you the reason why you're no longer working. There's going to be a few options, but it's just the takeaway here is that in order to qualify, you need to have lost your job through no fault of your own or quit with what they define as good cause. So with good cause means that you left because you had a legitimate concern for your health, you were sick with COVID-19, or you needed to care for a family member in your household with COVID-19. So if you quit preventatively, but you didn't have any of these risk factors, then they wouldn't determine that necessarily as quitting with good cause, and you probably would not be approved for unemployment insurance. Okay, now the next few slides are going to be a sample of what you'll see in the application. And you could find the presentation from which I took some of these slides linked here. Okay, so here are some of the questions. I know it's a bit blurry, but I'll read them out just so you get a sense. There's 10 pages to the application. So this first question here says, this week, beginning Monday, April 27th, 2020, how many days have you worked? And when you apply, the answer to this question should be 0. So if you lost your job on Monday and you try applying, if you lost your job on Wednesday of a week and you try applying the very next day on Thursday, you should instead wait until the following week when you can say that you haven't worked at all during that week. It's also asking you the same week, did you earn more than $504 the last day that you worked? And are you filing this claim because your workplace closed, you were isolated, or you were quarantined due to COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus? It's also asking you if you worked in New York State in the last 18 months. Some more questions. Do you currently live in New York State? Asking you about if you're in the military and if you're a federal employee. These are just a sample, again, of some of the questions that you should be seeing in the application. All right, once you're done going through all of the questions, what you're going to see is a confirmation page like this, and it's important that you save this. You could either take a picture of it or take a screenshot of it, but it's important that you have a record of this. It might help you in the future. You should also get a copy of this in your inbox, in which you can access through your account, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit as well. But nonetheless, it's still important that you save this page when you get to it. Don't count on a copy being in your inbox. A little bit about filing for pandemic unemployment assistance, which is the second type of unemployment, which is an expansion under the federal law. An individual who's eligible for PUA will receive an additional set of questions that they must answer. Most likely, the way that you'll get these questions is through a link in your inbox on your ny.gov ID account. And if once you've finished the application, they determine that you're eligible for PUA, they'll be sending you a message in your inbox that looks like this, and it will be directing you to answer additional questions. Here's a sample of some of the additional questions that they'll ask you. The first one there says, did your place of employment, full-time or part-time, or self-employment close partially or fully as a direct result of COVID-19? On which day did it close? And were you otherwise able and available to work? Here's some other questions that will be in that questionnaire. The first one there says, including self-employment, did you work? Did you receive sick leave or another paid leave benefits? Did you refuse any job offer or job referral for any reason other than the following? And there's a list. And then it also explains that pandemic unemployment insurance covers people who are unable to work because they meet one or more of the following conditions. So the answers to all of these questions should be no, if you're eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. And this is what you'll see if they ask you to submit extra documents for pandemic unemployment assistance. And this is the confirmation that you'll see for that application. Again, really important to print this or take a screenshot of it for your records. All right, and if they deem you eligible, then you'll receive a notification that looks like this, informing you that you should begin your weekly certification. Again, this will be sent to your inbox in your account. So it's important to monitor that regularly. You should be checking it every day. Some things to keep in mind. I think one of the questions earlier was about this, and it's a common point of confusion, the question that asks if you're ready, willing, and able to work on the application. So the Department of Labor understands that obviously many workers can't work due to COVID-19 and the impact of New York State on pause. So when you're faced with this question, if you would otherwise be able to work, if it weren't for the pandemic, then you would answer yes to that question. Again, highlighting the importance of certifying weekly. You could do this on the phone, but again, I recommend doing it online. We're going to go through how to do that in a minute as well. Again, mentioning that the application will determine which program, unemployment insurance or PUA, you are eligible for, and you'll be prompted to answer program-specific questions in the application. It's important to note this next thing, which is that if the Department of Labor needs more information from you, they will call you. The application might tell you that you should call them, but because so many people are applying, the way that the Department of Labor is doing this piece now is that representatives who are working from home will call you directly instead of you calling them. It's important to note that their caller ID may show up as private, so be monitoring your phone calls and answering them because it could be the Department of Labor. If you're approved for state unemployment insurance benefits, you don't have to take any extra steps for the extra $600 that I mentioned earlier. Again, it's automatic. And I wanted to mention as well that unemployment benefits is not one of the benefits that are considered when making a public charge determination in the context of immigration law. All right. I mentioned this a little bit before, but again, you should keep a record of when you keep records generally, including when you first tried to apply. So if you applied by phone, then you should have the phone call log. Take a screenshot of the times that you've called or just note them. And if you did it online, then you should also take screenshots and save it. Again, you should definitely be checking your inbox daily, and you have to respond to any additional questions, forms, and instructions that appear there. Certifying weekly. Another thing that you have to do is certify benefits every week. If you don't, then you won't be paid for that week that you didn't certify. That week won't be taken from your total allotted weeks that you can be receiving unemployment insurance, but you also won't have the opportunity to double up the next week. So let's say I forgot to certify this week. Next week, I won't be able to certify for next week and this week. I'll only be able to certify for next week. So when you have unemployment insurance, I believe it's 39 weeks total that you can receive benefits. So if you forget 1 week, that week won't be subtracted from your total. But again, it's also like you're not going to get twice the pay or the opportunity to certify for the week that you missed the following week. So it's important to remember to do it every week. When you do log in to do this, the system's going to ask you a series of questions that are all really centered around if you've worked recently. So if you haven't worked, then all of your answers will either be 0, no, or not applicable. Again, I'll show you more detail about this in a minute. You should also be certifying every week, even if you haven't been approved yet, because if you don't, then you won't, again, get payments for the weeks that you didn't certify. So let's say that there's 3 weeks in between when you apply and when you're approved. If you haven't been certifying every week, you're not going to receive those 3 weeks that you were waiting. But if you have been, then you will. So it's important that you certify every week. And this is the link to where you will go to do this: labor.ny.gov/sign-in. Here's a video showing how what you'll see and where to go in your account to certify. So let me play this really quickly. All right, so this is what you'll see when you click the link. You're going to sign in here. And then you'll see this once you log in. I wanted to point out the Messages Center, which is where you should be going every day to check to see if they've sent you anything. You might also be notified by email, but I wouldn't count on that. I would just check it every day. And if you scroll down, the unemployment insurance section is where you're going to be able to do pretty much everything else. So this is where you'll go to file a claim, claim your weekly benefits. You can also go here to view your payment history, which is how you can also check whether or not they've approved you yet. So where I'm circling now is where you would see the link to certify, but because in this account we did it already for this week, it's not showing up. And that's where you would go to view your payment history, which again, like I said, is where you can see if they've approved you or not. If they have, then you'll see the day and like a little chart with amounts in it. Okay. I should mention now that I'll be sending this presentation out at the end to anybody who would like it. And I'm going to ask my colleague to include in the chat and the comment section a link to a Google form where you can enter your contact information if you'd like me to send this presentation to you. Also, that same link will be included at the end, and I'll mention it again. So you will have access to this later if you'd like it. I mentioned in that video that we already had certified benefits for that account, and that's why you didn't see the option to do it. But if we hadn't, then this is what you would see. It just says claim weekly benefits, and that's where you would click, and it would ask you some of the questions that I mentioned earlier. All right. So that was all on unemployment. Again, if you have questions, please note them in the chat or the comments, and we'll get to them at the end. Moving on to HRA, which is where you can apply for SNAP, which is food stamps, cash assistance, and or Medicaid. Similar to unemployment insurance, many people have filed or want to file for benefits through HRA, which is the Human Resources Administration. Again, HRA issues SNAP, which is food stamps, cash assistance, and Medicaid. You can apply for all three or just SNAP through the HRA website at nyc.gov/accesshra, which we'll be going through in more detail in a minute. In order to apply for these benefits, you must be a citizen or legal permanent resident. But if you're not, and you have children in the household who are, then you can submit and be approved for an application for them. So that's important to note for people who are head of household but aren't a citizen or legal permanent resident. You can apply through your children and be receiving benefits for your children. Your children will be the ones receiving them technically, which also means that this is not a public charge consideration either for that adult. Eligibility for these benefits have not changed under COVID-19, unlike unemployment benefits, which have changed. So if you'd like to see if you are eligible for these, here's a really good tool from Benefits Plus, which can help you calculate which ones you are eligible for. Before you go into the application, here's some things that you're going to want to have. social security numbers, and ID, including school IDs for everyone in the household. It does ask for school IDs for young people in the house, so I would have that on you so that they can more easily confirm school attendance, etc. If you have a residency card, I would have that. Income information as well, including your employer's name, their contact information and address, and 1 month's worth of pay stubs. You're also going to want to have on-hand expenses information, which includes utility bills and rent. It doesn't include necessarily things like Wi-Fi on the application itself, though you can submit those later as evidence, which I'll get into. All right, so when you go into that link that I mentioned, this piece here is what you'll see, and it'll prompt you to create an account or log in if you already have one. But this is what you should see if you're on the right website. Once you make an account, you'll see these options, which are the options for the applications. So the first, as you can see here, is just SNAP. The next one is cash assistance, which if you click the cash assistance option, it's actually going to be cash assistance, SNAP, and Medicaid all in one. So if you want to do cash assistance and SNAP, then you should select this one, for example, and then Medicaid as well. All right, so I'm not going to go through the questions in detail, but this is just like an example of what you should see if you're in the right place, and so that you get an idea. The questions are pretty straightforward, and the sections include, as you can see here, this one is about household, so it'll be the names of people in your house, dates of birth, and if they're working, things like that. And then there's other sections which include income, expenses, etc. But they're pretty straightforward, and it'll be relatively quick if you have all that information with you already. So once you're done going through that application, you'll receive a confirmation page with a list of documents that they're asking you to submit as evidence of the things that you claimed in your application. It's important to save this page. You should also receive an email with the same things, but just in case, I would again print or screenshot this page. Now, to submit the documents, you can do it through HRA's app on your phone or through the mail. I would recommend that you use the app as it's the fastest way. So to find the app, you can search Access HRA on your phone's app store. And this is what the logo looks like. I want to show now this video, which shows you in the app how to submit the documents that you need for your case. All right, so that seemed simple enough, but I will go through a few tips on how to upload documents in a moment as well. The next thing you can do in the app is view your case details, which will show you the deadlines by which you need to submit the documents, and also it'll show you your balance. So if they've paid you, how much they've paid you, or when they will pay you next. So I'll play that one now. Okay, as I mentioned, the app seems simple enough, but there is a common issue, which is that there's a lot of traffic on the site, the HRA website, and also on the app itself. I've experienced this multiple times where I can't log in to the site, and I also can't submit documents on the app. And I take that as a lot of people being on it, and so it's slow. So what I would do is if you can't log in or submit documents, just keep trying. It's a common issue that people are facing. And don't be surprised if that happens to you. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some updates in community resources and stimulus checks. The first is on the stimulus checks. The first thing I'll mention is that many people who are eligible to receive a check still have not. There is, though, an IRS web portal which will let users check the status of their payment and add bank account information to receive payment by direct deposit. Here's a link to the website. If I remember correctly, they ask you for your social security number, date of birth, address, and your full name on that website. And then it should tell you when you're supposed to receive your payment, or if there's anything else that you need to be aware of with it. All right, so about eligibility for these checks. So who will receive a check? The first thing is that you need to have a social security number. So again, this left out people who don't have a social security number. And in a little bit, I'll talk about if that's your situation, if you don't have a social security number, what are some things that you do qualify for, or some financial resources that you can't access. So that's coming up in a bit. But for the stimulus check, again, you do need to have a social security number. So if you have an ITIN, again, you're not eligible. If you live in a mixed status family, you're also not eligible. So if you and your partner, for example, file taxes together, you have a social security number, but your partner doesn't, then you're not eligible to receive a stimulus check. I will say that some people have received checks who are in that situation, but that's not the norm. That's not what's supposed to be happening. DACA recipients are also eligible for stimulus checks. I know that some people thought that they are not, but they are because they have work authorization and socials. So they are eligible for checks and they should be receiving them. In order to receive a check, importantly also, you need to have filed taxes in 2018 or 2019. That's how the IRS is determining who is and who is not eligible for the checks, in addition to the things that I just listed. So under the CARES Act, there are financial constraints, income constraints to who can receive a check. So the IRS under the CARES Act is sending $1,200 to individuals and $2,400 to couples who filed joint tax returns, plus an additional $500 for each child under the age of 17. These rebates will be reduced for those with incomes above $75,000, or $150,000 for couples, or $112,500 for head of household taxpayers. And if you make more than $99,000 or $198,000 for couples, then you won't receive a payment at all. So the takeaway here is if you make less than $75,000 and have all of these characteristics as well, then you should receive a stimulus check. And here's where you can check on your payment. Another thing I'll note is that I've heard that some people who filed their taxes in 2018 or 2019 through a third party, like let's say H&R Block, for example, and also had their account set up so that H&R Block gets paid directly through their refund, by some error in the IRS's system, their stimulus checks have accidentally ended up with H&R Block. So if that sounds like that could be your situation, I would check in with your third-party tax preparer as well. Moving on to some updates about rent. The halt on evictions in New York State is still in place. There's still advocacy around a rent freeze, but that is yet to come, which means that if you can't pay rent for this month or for last month, then your landlord can't take action against you, but they can, you will have to pay that rent at a later time. Versus a rent freeze would say that you don't have to pay that money, but that's not the situation right now. The situation right now is that you will have to pay that money later. Nonetheless, the important takeaway is that you can't be evicted or have any action taken against you if you can't pay your rent this month or last. Housing courts are closed still. I also wanted to mention that I understand that some folks can't work right now because their employer has closed. They weren't deemed an essential business, but there are but some people do want to work, and so SBU has created a job board with employment opportunities that are currently available, and you can find that job board at this link: bit.ly/SBU job board, bit.ly/SBU job board. We have a bunch of opportunities there right now, and we update it whenever we find new ones. So I would check that out if you're looking for work right now. Okay, for small businesses, I wanted to mention that the federal fund for loans and grants has more money in it now. And you can learn more at fmaonline.net. And also this NYC specific link here has some really good resources on eligibility, and also has a link to request an appointment with somebody who can go through it with you one-on-one. Now this next section is for people who were left out of the federal law that expanded unemployment and the stimulus checks to people. So funds for people who are undocumented have popped up since COVID-19. These are the ones that are currently open. We do have links to more, but a lot of them are closed right now because of high need. I wanted to include some links to some funds that people can apply for or request from. I also wanted to mention that New York City announced, I think about 2 weeks ago now, that they partnered with a foundation for funding for NYC families who have been left out of the federal expansion packages. They have yet to announce details on how to apply for that and how people can receive that money, but it is something that is coming soon. So if you'd like to receive updates on that, I will be sending them out to those who fill out their contact information at the link that I will show in a little bit, and that I believe my colleague shared in the comments already. Also, SBU has received some funding, and will be announcing in the next 2 weeks how SBU families can receive that who are in this situation as well. Okay, some immigration-specific updates. For DACA recipients, you should renew your application as soon as possible. The Supreme Court is still deciding some cases, and they will decide DACA's future very soon, though we don't know the exact date. So if you receive DACA, I would definitely renew your application. Even if you still have like a year, you can submit for renewal, though it might not actually go through, but it also might. And if you'd like to talk more about that, you can reach out to me. I would also be calling the court hotline. Here's the number. If you have a case in immigration court right now, to check when your case will be rescheduled. You should have received a letter in the mail with rescheduling information, since the immigration courts are closed. But in the event that you didn't, you should be calling this hotline regularly so that you know when your case will be rescheduled. USCIS, for example, is prepared to reopen on or about June 4th. So I don't know when the rest of the immigration system is going to start popping up, but that's pretty soon. So you could check the USCIS website and also be calling the court at this phone number to stay on top of your dates. Okay, so for some topics that maybe I didn't touch on today, which include more on the stimulus bill and unemployment, workers' rights, healthcare, a little more on immigration cases, and some more on other community resources, you can view the first webinar that was done a month ago. A recording can be found on our Facebook and YouTube pages, and the slides itself are linked here. So if you'd like to check that out, you can feel free to do so. As I mentioned, here's some other organizations who can help with these things. Legal Aid Society, they did a really great presentation earlier this week on unemployment benefits and HRA benefits. They're a really great resource. Here's their helpline. Volunteers of Legal Services as well. They have an unemployed workers project. New York Legal Assistance Group. This is their resource hotline here for unemployment benefits, employees' rights, and consumer debt. And NYC Legal Services. They have a hotline as well for individuals denied unemployment insurance benefits. We'll leave that up for just a minute. Okay, I will take questions now. I'll give my colleague a minute to gather those. And in the meantime, again, here's the link. If you want this presentation sent to you, please be sure to enter your information at bit.ly/SBU webinar. And in the next slide is my contact information. I'm aware that some people who are viewing may not have a direct connection to SBU right now. Nonetheless, you're welcome to reach out to me. And if I can't help you directly, then I will connect you with somebody who can. So here is my contact information. I would recommend texting me because sometimes my phone calls don't go through for some reason, but here's my cell phone number. That's the best way to get in touch with me. Also, this link here, I added to make an appointment with me directly. If you want to just go here to calendly.com/Sarah Gomez SBU, you can see all the times I'm available and just pick one and I'll call you at that time and we can talk. That might be a more direct way, but whatever you prefer, this is all my information. So I'll leave that up and I'll ask my colleague Kartika whenever you're ready to start reading out any questions that people might have.
Okay, so one of the first questions is, you need Social Security to qualify for benefits?
Yes. But if you don't, then and you have children in the household who do, then you can apply for them, and your household can receive the benefits.
Okay, the next one has a couple questions.
Okay.
It says, if an applicant made a mistake in filing off the online application, do you have a recommended way for them to contact the DOL to report the mistake? Or should they message the DOL through their inbox?
I would say it doesn't hurt to message them through the inbox, though I don't know how quickly people would respond. What I would do is reach out to, let me navigate back to their contact information. Legal Aid Society, I actually I have somebody who I'm helping who has the same situation. There was a mistake on their application. And when I was on Legal Aid's presentation earlier this week, I mentioned it to them. And they said that I should reach out to them for help. And we're in the process of trying to figure that out right now. So I would reach out to them. They have a lot of expertise on this. Here's their helpline. And here's a link to some other information that they have. But I would note their number and reach out to them.
Great. The next question is, for HRA benefits, for clients applying online and approved, do they have to fill out the EBT card in person?
There should be an option for it to be mailed to you. I know there are a few offices that are open. But I believe when you're filling out the application, there should be like an option to have it mailed to you. Because I don't think any of the folks who I've helped have had to go pick it up in person. I think it's just been sent to them.
And how can you apply for the SBU fund?
Yeah, great question. So we are going to receive more information on the details of how that will all be rolled out. We're receiving the funds through another organization, so they're going to direct us on any requirements that may exist, and we're going to learn all of that information next week. So we'll probably have that information out to SBU families either at the end of next week or the beginning of the following week. So basically, we don't have that information yet, but if you want to stay up to date, I would enter your contact information at this bit.ly link, and I'll be sure to send it out once we have it.
Okay, and I believe the last question is, I have applied for unemployment for a month, and they have not received anything yet.
So in that situation, that does seem abnormal. I would say, there are long waiting times, but a month does seem really long. So I would ask one, make sure you're certifying. Two, I would check your inbox to see if they've sent you anything. And if they haven't sent you anything, you could always try calling, but I don't know if you're going to get through to anybody. But yeah, those are the two things that come to mind. To make sure you're certifying, also make sure you're checking your inbox, see if they've sent you something that you need to take extra steps on. Also, maybe they've tried calling you. So I would make sure again for others to make sure that they're answering their phone. And then lastly, though, if none of those things seem to hit the nail on the head for your situation, I would say reach out to me and we could talk in a little more detail about your situation and try to troubleshoot together. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to send them in now. We'll give folks another minute, but I think that was the last question you said, right, Kartika? Okay, great. Yeah, so if folks have other questions, please go ahead and send them in now. In the meantime, again, I'll just note that my contact information is on the screen. Anyone is free to reach out to me or go ahead and schedule an appointment here at the Calendly site. All right, so it looks like we don't have any other questions. I wanted to thank everybody again for being here today. I will go ahead and send out this presentation to everybody tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good evening, everyone.